Hello, you're back with the Roker Rapport Xtra podcast. I'm meeting you a little bit early this time. I'm actually recording this on a Monday, so I'm still sort of getting my breath back from that game on Saturday. I don't know what it was really. I mean, essentially, I've never been so angry with the team after 45 minutes. I think ashamed, embarrassed. I could understand people walking out. I was absolutely beside myself with how poor it was. And then 45 minutes later, I'm scratching my head thinking that this football team surely wants me dead, I think. I'm not really sure how you describe that. I don't know what I can explain from Saturday. It was enjoyable though. I actually did enjoy myself. It was funny at the very least. But we've got Brentford coming up this Saturday. And obviously I've got my guest, as always. We've got Billy from Beesotted, as in the Bees, from a very successful Brentford podcast. How you doing, mate? Are you all right?
I'm pretty good, actually. Not too bad. I've recovered from the weekend. I've recovered from the week. The weekend we had Preston North End down, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit. And we've got a relationship with Preston, as we say. I know Sunderland have only been down there for one season, so you're still probably finding your feet around this division. But we've been here a few years now, and we don't like going to. We like going to particular games. We like actually sort of non-glamorous games, because what we find is that when you go to non-glamorous games, you get a really good relationship with the fans. And Preston is like one of the games where when the fixture comes up in the calendar, we just book our trains immediately, and they do exactly the same thing. And on Saturday, basically, they came down, they were invited to our pub, we saw them at a table, everything like that. They all booked hotels, and about, I don't know, must have been about 30 of them came down on Saturday, had a great time, booked their hotel, and we took them out. And I found myself cycling home at 2:00 in the morning after a very long session with the Preston North End lads and lasses, the gentry as it was. It was very cold. I was rather drunken, as they can say, but I was good enough to actually get myself home on the back of my bicycle on Saturday. So that was quite good. And before that, on Wednesday, we actually flew out to Dundalk in Ireland, as you do. So myself and Dave Lane, who we co-run Beesotted, the Brentford blog and podcast, we just flew out there to see our Brentford B team, which we'll probably talk about a little bit, which is basically the second team. And we thought, tell you something, they're playing in Ireland, and let's just go over there and see them. So we went out to Ireland, to Dundalk, for a night, and we had the best time that we've ever had. It was absolutely fantastic. And our podcast is up there if you want to listen to it as well. It's just brilliant. Even if you're not a Brentford fan, listen to it. But it's such a laugh. We just basically podcasted the whole day and evening, and the lock-in till 3:00 in the morning or 4 in the morning, whatever we had then. But anyway, that's been my week. So now, as you can see, I'm just coming back into this week a little bit more relaxed, even though I've got my glass of wine here.
Going back into the real world for a little bit. Yeah, that sounds
right.
Good. That's dedication. The B team. As in Brentford's big team, I imagine, not like as in Dundalk, or not like a second team or anything like that.
No. It was actually Dundalk's first team, and if a lot of people don't know about Dundalk, basically Dundalk are one of the sort of the top sides in Irish football. You sort of think, a load of rubbish, but the fact is that they're in the Europa League this season, and they've just got some new owners, so they've got some money in there. So they're actually trying to get into the Champions League, and obviously their owners see it as a cheap way of getting European football. And they say, if we get into the Champions League this season, then it's going to, we'll get 40 million or 200 million. I can't remember what the figure is, but it's big money for them. So I was very, very surprised, because we thought, our B team, we went there for a couple of drinks, and there's probably only about 1,000, 1,500 fans at the game, but the game was like an FA Cup, it was like Newcastle Sunderland game. Yeah, it really was. It was just like full tempo, really fast, calls flying in. Our B team plays really, really good football. It's like this passing game. It's like from the bottom to the top. It's the style of football has been passed through. So they're playing Dundalk's first team, but they weren't messing around. But then this is really important, and we were awesome. Why are you guys you're so serious? You really want to win? But they were flying in, and it was brilliant. And the crowd was going completely mental as well. In the second half, they took it up a gear, and when they scored, the fans were pointing at us and chanting and all sorts of stuff. We were thinking, this is our B team. We just come here for a bit of a laugh. But it was really, 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 really good night. I tell you, it was brilliant.
You mentioned your result beforehand as well, the Preston game. I noticed that I've got a few friends who are Preston fans. One of my best pals is married to a girl from Preston who's I believe a season ticket holder. And I noticed that on Saturday that you drew 1-1 at home, but Preston were down to 10 men. Talk me through Saturday's game. What happened on Saturday?
Saturday didn't quite go according to plan in the Brentford scheme of things. Preston, we knew they'd be a tricky side, because obviously they're doing pretty well. People underestimate them, quite similar to what sometimes people do with us as well, but somebody underestimates them. So we thought we're not going to underestimate them. They got let's say fairly early goal. They got a goal in the first half, which we're still trying. I haven't watched it back yet as well, but we're still trying to work out how they scored it. They kind of sort of put a cross into the middle, which I think was meant to be sort of kind of a sort of cross that was going nowhere, and a guy managed to get a header. He kind of glanced into the goal and he got there. But then after that, they played a quite a physical game to hold us back, which is, which worked for them. It's annoying for us because we play one particular style of football. We like playing the ball around and pretty football and all that kind of stuff. Because he thought, the way that we're going to get them, Alex Neil, their manager, he just said, just stop them, stop whichever way you need to, just stop them. So they did. And one of our podcast posse, the Liberal Nick, who normally gets everything wrong, but to be fair, he actually got this one right. And he said in about 15 minutes, he goes, someone's going to get sent off today. Before, don't nonsense. Referees don't do that. And it was true. The player got sent off for a second yellow. A bit of a clumsy tackle, the second one. If you speak to the Preston fans, we do a post-match podcast, which we'll be doing after the Sunderland game. What we do is that we get the microphone, or a phone, out and just stick it under loads of fans' noses after the game. And we just talk to them straight after the game. So it's that post-match passion, oh, no, the referee's terrible. Oh, yeah. So we do that. And we speak to both home and away fans. So we did that after the game. We spoke to Brentford fans and Preston fans after the game. About 30 minutes of this podcast. It was great podcast, actually. It was quite good. And afterwards, we put it up and it's live about 7:30 at night. Like I said to you, we'll do the same thing after the Sunderland game on Saturday. So if you check it out, you should do. And all the Sunderland fans were moaning, saying that, apparently our keeper, which we didn't see, he feigned injury. Somebody sort of kind of tackled, went into him and he went down and the player got a yellow card off the back of it and they said it wasn't true. So the same player is the one that got actually tackled again or went for a tackle again and got the red card. And they said if it was our goalkeeper's fault that he went down. And we got quite a good relationship with them and they don't they're not real moaning. We always beat them at Griffin Park, to be quite honest with you. So, when they come down, they said, we're coming down for our annual thrashing, and it didn't quite happen like that. So, I think that maybe what they said, maybe there might be a little bit of truth in it. But to be fair, they were also time wasting from about the 7th minute or the 10th minute as well. And they were going properly hard in with a lot of quite not good tackles. So it was one of those ones where at the end of the day, probably a draw was the fairest result, even though in the second half we did have a mini Alamo and we could have scored, but we just got a little bit of an issue because we're still trying to solve our goal scoring issues at the moment now. We sold Lasse Vibe, as probably you know, who's our top striker, and we sold him to China a few days ago. It's a deal that's actually been going on for quite a long time. We found out about it as Beesotted in the summer when I went out to Shanghai and we spoke to our Chinese sources out there and they told us that this was happening. This club called Changchun Yatai was after him. The news wasn't anywhere else. It was just us that was just pushing this information, but I don't think people believed us. So we podcasted it. We wrote about it. We said, he's going to do this deal. It fell through at the last minute in the summer because they missed the transfer deadline. The Chinese transfer deadline is actually on the 15th of July, I think it was, which is about a month and a half before ours. So it didn't go through. For him, he wanted to just basically say, look, I'm 30 years old. I just want some big money now. So I'm going to go to China. And he also had rejected China twice beforehand. He rejected China to actually join Brentford before us. And before that, he actually rejected China before. So I think he probably thought, Jesus, third time, lucky, I'm not going to get another chance like that. So he decided to go for it. And it didn't happen then. But the Chinese came back in this window and they signed him up. And he was, he went and they're actually the same team they signed. It was Igalo, who used to play for Watford. Signed him up. They signed him for 20 million about a year ago today. And I just think that they just saw the opportunity to sign a player who's a renowned goal scorer. They don't have the same kind of rules as what do. They just need to get bums on seats over there and win things and spend a lot of money. So they're quite happy to pay him probably like 50 grand a week and, give us £2 million for a player who's out of contract in 3 months' time, So they did that and he's gone. But, what that means for Brentford is that we need to have a player that's going to step up. And we're still juggling with that at the moment now because we've got Neil Maupay, who we signed in the summer, who is a proper little hard worker player. I think he might have even scored against you. I'm not sure. I'll have to check the facts. But he does miss a lot of chances and he's still trying to find his feet in English football. A lot of Brentford fans are giving him a lot of stick, to be fair. And I think it's probably a little bit unjust because when Vibe came and we came to the side, if you check him out, he joined Brentford in, June or July. He didn't actually start scoring till April the 2nd, which was like nearly 9 months down the line, as he acclimatised to the league. So, and I think that's what happens with Brentford. We buy players who are rough jewels, and then we kind of get them up and running. And then when they're up and running, then they start scoring, and then somebody buys them. That's how it normally goes, which is quite frustrating, to be honest with you. But so that's the score. So Maupay is one Watkins who plays on the wing, but then he sometimes comes into the middle. So, maybe it might be him. We got this new kid called Emiliano Marcondes, who we got from Denmark, and we bought him in the summer, but we left him over there for 4 months, and he became the top goal scorer in Denmark. As you do, he's like above all the players. So we've got these players there, which may be the one, but Lasse Vibe obviously was the kingpin, and we're kind of struggling. Not at the moment, just to get somebody to take his place, which is a bit frustrating. So I think that Preston benefited from that, and also benefited the fact we had about 3 or 4 players out. Ryan Woods, who you probably know about, he played very well against you. The ginger Messi, as they call him. So yeah, he played very against you in the 3-3 game down at Griffin Park. He was out. We had Barbe, who wasn't playing as our left back. He wasn't playing as well. We had quite a few. And Chris Mepham, who's our central defender, who is he's only a young kid, only 20 years old. He only just came into the side, ironically, out of the B team. I saw him play a year ago against QPR. QPR under 23s played our B team, and Chris Mepham was there. I think he might have been the captain then, exactly a year ago. And then at the beginning of the season, he wasn't even playing first team games. I think he played for he might have played against Dulwich Hamlet in the pre-season, but again for the B team. But the B team actually puts players through, so they give them the path through to the A team, because our academy never did that. And he managed to get a place in the side. They said they put him in against Norwich just before Christmas because Egan, who's our player who used to play for you actually, he was injured. And he hasn't looked back since. And he's only played a dozen games. And Eddie Cow came down and offered us £8 million for him in this window, which was pretty amazing, considering he literally has come out of the B team and he's only played a dozen games.
You're talking about Ryan Woods. Ryan Woods was someone we were quite heavily linked to when Grayson was here, but I think he's probably like one of your, if not your best player, one of the best players. I watched him quite closely because of that link, because I thought we might have went in January, because obviously when we played against you, you had Grayson there, but he looked like the kind of player that in today's day and age, you could quite easily ask £8-9 million for. He does the basics very well, but I think sometimes you need a player like that. How important is he to Brentford?
Ryan Woods is really important, and like I said, I'm not going to put the team down or what down. I think, but the frustrating thing is that we're like a smaller version of, like, you've got these other bigger teams, like Arsenal will have a very important player, but then afterwards, if somebody comes in and offers them 35 million for him, they'll sell him. So every player has got a price to a certain extent to certain teams.
For sure.
And Ryan Woods is very important to us as well, but also he's got a price. Interestingly, when Sunderland were in for him, both in the summer, well, not in for him, the rumours were in for him. You don't know where those rumours have come from, in the summer, and you talked about now. And obviously, Beesotted, we put our little nose around, we find out, what exactly was the score. And the word that we heard is that we're not sure if Sunderland would be able to afford him. And the thing is that, you said £8 or £9 million. We've got Chris Mepham, who's a young 20-year-old who's played 12 games, and we turned down a bid for £8 million for him. And that is a cat. So the fact is that, Eddie Howe or whoever else will probably come in the summer and offer more money than that. And, we'll probably end up selling him for whatever it is. Frustrating it is, but what I'm trying to say to you is that Ryan Woods is worth a lot more than that, I would expect. He's very important to Brentford, but if somebody offered us 15 million for him or 16 million for him, I'm sure they would take the money. But then what we always end up doing is that, we get frustrated because we love the players, but then we end up reinvesting, spending £3 million or 2 million or 1.5, and then getting a player who's equally as good. And we did exactly the same thing last summer with Scott Hogan. Scott Hogan had played, I think, about 20 games for Brentford. He'd been injured. He had 2 serious injuries. He signed for £750,000 from Rochdale.
Yeah.
He got injured on his debut up at Rotherham. I remember seeing it. It was like, oh, geez, right there. He came in and then he got injured straight away, and then he was out for 2 years, and then he came back, and I remember we just kept on playing him. He came off the bench and he'd play like 10 minutes and he'd score a goal. Then the next week he'd come off for 10 minutes, score another goal, 10 minutes, score a goal. And I think he probably scored about 7 goals, but he played in total minutes of football. And then the following season, he just carried on where he was going. And so September, October, November, December, he scored goals again, and he was like a leading goal scorer for 14 goals with half a season. Aston Villa bought him for £12 million. It was ridiculous, and people were like, but, the feeling was Scott Hogan's cool, but the problem is that our game revolves so much around him. Everything had to go through him. And we found that when Scott Hogan left, all the other players sort of started to come into their own, and people sort of started stepping into their game and started stepping up their game. So it was better for the team. So it was great because when Scott Hogan was on form, the team was on form. But when he wasn't on form, then no one was on form. It's one of those ones. So, this is not a disrespect to Scott Hogan. And he went to Aston Villa and they had no idea. It's almost like they hadn't read the Scott Hogan manual. So we were going, you've got a decent striker there. That's right. And we after every week there was tweeting going, waste of money, biggest waste of money we've ever had. And we were just like, what are you talking about? He's a really good player, but you actually, you obviously didn't know what to do with him when you bought him. So for the whole year they didn't know what to do with him. But all of a sudden, he started to actually score goals because they probably went inside the cupboard and thought, there's the Scott Hogan manual that we forgot to read, but now we've read it, we know exactly what to do with it. Works. Yeah, which is all good. So that's kind of what happens with us. So we're not saying it's not going to work all the time, but in general, so far, Andre Gray, when we sold him for 9 million after buying him for 500,000, a year later, and Lasse Vibe came in and he started scoring, and then Scott Hogan came in, and it just seems to work for us. It may go horribly wrong at some stage, but the odds are, the percentages have been working in our favour so far. But the problem that we have, and we might talk about this later, is that we've got this system which revolves around we scout our players traditionally, but we also scout our players using mathematical statistics, which is a system that's come out from our owner, because he owns a company that's made lots of money from basically finding out information from sports players all around the world. So he basically knows loads of stuff about loads of sports players all around the world. And he just went, tell you something, why don't I own a football club and then get this information so that we can find players that no one's got any idea anything about, because the algorithm I've got actually gives me different information than these other clubs like Nottingham Forest or Aston Villa or anything like that, because this is my business. This is what I do. So that's why we kind of end up finding these players that you'll go, I've never heard of them. And then 6 months later.
Is that the, I wrote an article on this about in the summer when we had, and we still don't have any money. And I remember, I could be completely wrong here, but the Moneyball situation, signing players on statistical analysis, I want to say that your chairman was part of that kind of school of thought, wasn't he?
He was. I mean, if you speak to him, he hates the word Moneyball because I think it's very lazy. They made a movie out of it, and it's what they do in baseball. But if that makes people understand it a little bit, yes. What it is that in effect, it's actually probably quite simple. But because football is a game which is done in a particular way, people err against it, or they have been erring against it for a long time. But now people are slightly warming to it, and basically what he's saying is that, listen, this is here, as to who we're going to buy. Ever and go and buy players like pounds, but we can't do that because we cannot afford to do that. So let them go off and do that, and let them go and find these players who 2 years before that were £1 million and buy for 12 million. However, a small club, we get £10 million turnover every year. We get a hardcore of 6,500-7,000 fans. We've got at the moment no sponsorship really coming in, no hospital coming in. Right in what our income is, and it's our owner that actually puts the money in. He says what we need to find players that are a bit left field, that people don't really know about the play. They've got these little factors in there, right? These little qualities, right, as being qualities which we feel with our coaching system we can improve. So at the end of the day, they're not, like, so for example, the best striker in the world, but what they've done is that in the 100 games or the 80 games that they've played, they've got these little spikes in the statistics that we use, which we're not going to tell you about because this is what we do, but this is how we identify them. And we think these things are looking really good. And what we do is that we feel that if we bring them in, we can improve them to make them a better player. And that's now me coming back to people like Malpe. Obviously, they looked at his game and probably thought, he's he's fast or he's not fast, or he's really good here, or he's really good at running onto the ball and picking up things in areas. He has lots of shots, blah, 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 in certain heat spots and everything like that, which is actually much better than, this striker from Man United who scores lots of goals, but he doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. So he works on that. So if we can work on these particular elements of his game, he'll be a very good striker. So that's kind of how they work with it. And in general, it seems to work out. So we get these players in and they're all right. The next minute, they just seem to step up two or three levels. Some of them, they don't work out, but that's the game that you're in, because when you're gambling with people who are rough diamonds, that rough diamond may polish up to be a properly expensive diamond, or you might polish it up and it's like a cubic zirconia. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's funny listening to you talk about recruitment, because the one thing that, and you might be able to see this from the outside, I don't think it's any secret, but Sunderland's problem for a number of years has been recruitment. And I think one thing I find quite interesting about Brentford is obviously you haven't churned through managers the way that we have, but you have had different managers over the last few years. And the one thing I've noticed with Brentford, very similar to Swansea, no matter who the manager is, you have that plan in place for recruitment, and you also have the plan in place for how you play football. It's a passing game. Sunderland have a different style with every manager, a different recruitment with every manager. And that eventually has come to the head of we're sitting second, third bottom of the championship. Yeah. But the style of play with Brentford, you know what you're going to get. And it's been like that since the Uwe Rosler days. Yeah. How much do you think that helps a manager coming in when he's probably appointed based on the fact that he can work with that system you've just described, but he can also work, with a possession-based side?
It is absolutely massive. We've got to give props to the owner, Matthew Benham, right? And this is not sort of blowing smoke up his arse or anything like that, as people say. It's not. It's just like you look at it and it's just like businessman, person who knows where he's going. He's a Brentford fan. He's supported them for over 40 years. He's been to, he used to bunk off school to go and see them play. He decided to put money into them, but he also works into the city and, do all this other business stuff. So he's kind of got he's got a business mind. He's set up this company, which basically makes lots of money off, statistical data and actually using it to put into the gambling community as us. So people make money a lot of it. So he knows what he's doing. And he sat down and he said, okay, tell you what, I want to own a club which plays a particular style of football. It's going to be a passing game, and this is what we're going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of Andy Scott, who was the manager at the time, who wasn't playing the game. First of all, he tried to work with him, but it just wasn't really working out. And then he got in the manager and he got in Uwe Rosler. So he got in Uwe Rosler, and Uwe Rosler was the first person I remember who started to change the style of football that we played. And it was quite funny as a fan, because I've been supporting Brentford for 40 odd years, and pretty much all those 40 years have been in the pretty much is the third division, as it is, the third tier. We went down to the fourth tier a couple of years, and we went up to the tier we were in now. It's the second tier for 1 year. But we've been playing teams like, Rochdale and Southend and Oxford and all those teams. That's basically who we play year in, and Gillingham, just year in and year out. And that's what we're used to. And, that's part of our DNA. We're a proper lower league team. And then Uwe Rosler comes in, and then he starts to play the ball on the floor, and he's got this passing out from the back business and everything like that. And of course the players are going on and they're trying to pass the ball out from the back and then across, and you can see it's all going horribly wrong. And then the fans are going, "Oi, just get the ball up there, just stick it up there, can't move out." And it's hilarious, because we couldn't get our heads around it to start off with, but they stuck with it after time, and eventually we got there. And then I remember a year and a half later, we were, everyone's going, "Oh, it's just the best football I've ever seen in my life. It's brilliant, isn't it?" And Uwe Rosler did a fans forum, and I think we want to bust them to death. That's what we want to do, So we had this sort of proud, we were so proud that we were actually kind of changed our style of football. So, but that had come from the top, from the owner, and he was basically saying, this is what we're going to do. And then what we need to do is that we need to find the tools to do it. So we need to find the manager that believes in it. So you had Uwe Rosler, you had Mark Warburton, who was at the time, he was a coach. You sort of kind of brought him in on some sort of coaching role, I think. Then he ended up becoming so he's the one that found all the players. But Mark Warburton was very much believing in the passing style, and him and the owner used to talk to each other a lot. Don't talk to a lot, and they talk about Uwe, and they said, we should be doing this, Uwe, we should be doing that. That was basically where it was, and the ethos was kind of built into the club from the bottom up. And then they started to buy the players that they felt that could do it, because some of the players that Uwe had inherited, they were cool, but they just weren't good enough to play that football. They might have been good enough to, say, play for, Gillingham or Southend or, maybe Barnsley or Millwall. And this is no disrespect for these teams. People play different styles of football, so it's great for that. But for us, what we're doing, so you bring in the players, and eventually you start noticing the change in the club. The players are changing, the style of football is changing. So to answer your question, yes, that is right. It's gone all the way through. But what is very interesting is that when Uwe Rosler jumped ship to go to Wigan, prematurely, I believe, because I think that he should, if he stayed with Brentford, we would have gone up and he would have actually got a trophy under his belt, or he would have got a credit under his belt that he'd actually got a team promoted. But he went very early. He wanted to move up to Manchester. It was also a big call because Wigan was seen as a big club then at the time. I question that. I've got a lot of Wigan friends, but I just think, hold on a second, mate. So it's a shame. But Mark Warburton was actually, at the time, and everyone knows who he is now, but at the time he literally was director of football who his background was a youth team coach at Watford. And the owner really liked his ethos, so he gave him a job at Brentford and said, look, come here, you can be the director of football here. He actually gave him there's a previous job that he had that he actually was like when you get sort of kind of not puppet, but you get what's the word? You get like in the music industry, you get shadow writers. So you get somebody who sort of says, I've written this, but really there's a shadow writer. Somebody's actually written the song for them, really. He was like basically the shadow writer for when we got to the Leyland DAF final. Nicky Forster was the manager, but really the person behind the scenes was Mark Warburton, who didn't have the experience, but he was actually sort of apparently dictating the tactics and the players and everything like that. And Nicky Forster, who used to play for us, was the front person. So that was his first little delve into management. It didn't work particularly well. We lost that final, and we won and lost games. So when it came to Uwe Rosler got the gig. But then when Uwe Rosler jumped ship, Mark Warburton was meant to be the director of football, and he had a big list apparently of about 27 managers that were vying for the next job. And I could imagine people, I mean, he wouldn't tell us who was on there, but I can sure imagine there's people like Neil Warnock was on there, and probably Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, and probably Steve Bruce, and all these big heavy hitters. He told us this. We had an exclusive interview with him. He told us this, and then he just went up to the owner and went, give us your job. And the owner's like, sorry? He goes, give us a job. Look, I've got all these people, and I'm gonna sort them out for you, and I'm gonna get them interviews and get them a job. But give us a job. And the owner went, okay then. And it was like, it literally was as simple as that. He just basically thought, you've got the same ethos. We work together. I'm not really into big names. It doesn't really bother me. You could do a job. So we basically gave him a job, even though he had no experience. We were just on the verge of the top six, I think it was, in the first division, or probably even higher. And he put this, it was a really risky situation, and he put him in. And to be fair, he took the ball by the horns, and we were great and well and fantastic, and Brentford did really well. We went up. But the following year, we went up, and then we did better. We brought in some players, Andre Gray and all that lot. We were doing really well. But there was a little bit of a falling out, which I'm not going to go into the full details about. But a lot of it came down to, as you say, it's the system. It was a system that we have, and I think that where we were going and where we wanted to go to is, I think the owner realised that we needed to have a system where it's about everybody's on the same page. And this is like, I'm not trying to disrespect Mark or anyone like that, but the fact is that, how can I put this? It was, we needed more players at the time, because we feel that we weren't going in the right, because we weren't strong enough to get promotion. At the time, we were doing very well. We were in the top six, and we didn't feel that we were doing, that we weren't strong enough. The owner, he didn't want to buy the players, but he was saying, this is what we need to do. And everyone seemed to be pulling in different directions at that time. I think Mark Warburton probably wanted to do things his way. The owner felt, who's the owner, he's not dictating, but he's just saying, look, this is where we need to go. We normally sit around and we talk about things, where we're going to go. So there's a lot of things being pulled in different ways. And in the end, the owner made a decision that he needed to have a system where, I'm trying to put this, where the head coach was a head coach, basically. Before then, the head coach was a manager, and he made lots of different decisions. So if he doesn't want a player or he doesn't want this, that, and the other, it's fine. But in the end, the owner made a decision halfway through the season. He says, I'm changing this role to a head coach's role, which means that the manager hasn't got a veto on players. The manager can't turn around and knock players. If we've got a cooperative here saying, Jimmy, you put your 2 players in, Freddie, you put your 2 players in, Frank, you put your 2 players in, and you Paul put them in, and then out of that little veto, you bring out one of them. It's cool, which you might think were the best. Well, you all sit down and talk about it. That is something that seemed to work for them. But as soon as that fell down on its head, and you got one person saying no out of that whole owner to turn around and said, actually, I can't be having that. And that was what caused a lot of problems in Brentford's transitional period, where a lot of people said, you sacked Mark Orban, which wasn't quite true. Basically, he changed the rules as to what the manager could do. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Completely. I think it's and it's weird because I'm always really interested, right? And everyone who listens to this preview podcast will know that probably the most interesting thing that I like to know is the outside opinion of Sunderland, because I know we have a perception, but I think I'm even more interested from your perspective after speaking about what you just spoke about, because you actually support a team that has a plan from the top downwards in terms of no matter which manager it is, in terms of recruitment and everything we've just covered before. Yeah. Now, if I'm honest with you, my club, and I think everyone will agree with me here, it's complete opposite. Yeah. Like, we have a chairman that doesn't actually care. Yeah. We have a good manager, I think. That's my opinion, and I think
he is a good manager. Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious as to, and I know that at the end of the day, I follow Sunderland and I know a lot about Sunderland. Not always a great deal about sides outside of it, no more than the basics. But I think Sunderland obviously do get in the news probably for all the wrong reasons. So I think I'd ask this question almost every week. But from an outside perspective, bearing in mind what we've just spoken about, what's your thoughts on Sunderland as a club? Like, where do you think it's kind of gone wrong here for us?
Well, I think I'm very surprised with Sunderland. I'll be honest with you. I'm very surprised and almost a little bit disappointed because, for a start, I actually love going up to the northeast. It's one of my favourite places to go. I know they're a separate side from you, but Middlesbrough is one of our top 3 favourite away days. Preston and Middlesbrough. You can see how strange we are. You know what I'm saying? Newcastle, fantastic away day. I know you've got a rivalry with them. And also, but you guys, everyone's really looking forward to coming up to you as an away day. So we're a little bit disappointed with Sunderland in the fact that, where you are and potentially where you might be next season, because everyone wants to go back there again next season because we don't think we're going up anywhere, So yes, the score. Just coming back to the thing what we're saying about with the club, and I talked about the Warburton thing, but just moving on. Well, the difference is with Dean Smith now. What the owner did is because he changed the system to say, this is the way we play. These are the people that I want to be here. If you don't want to be part of the system, then okay, that's fine. You can leave. Now what you do is he brings in people who fit into the system. So instead of bringing a head coach who will come in and change everything around, he'll say, this is what we do. This is the style of football. This is the way we play. And boom, and he'll slot it in. And that's what Dean Smith has done. Dean Smith says, yep, I can play with that style. I'll do that. I'm quite happy if you identify certain players. I'll still put my input in. So I'll Romain Sawyers and Rico Henry. So what's happened is that you've got everybody working together. But what I think I'm trying to sort of say to you is that it's taken about 4 or 5 years for that to happen, but for them to stick to the plan. So they started the plan in 2011. We're in 2018 now. Everyone who can be in person, to the coaches, to the free kick coaches, to the head coach, everybody, they all know what it's all about. So it's almost like, if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. It's not a problem. So everybody's part of the plan and part of the party. And coming back to the Sunderland thing, I think that's part of the problem because no one's organising your club from the bottom up. So what they do is that they pull in a manager and then they just expect them to work miracles. But then when he comes in, he realises, God, there's quite a few more problems there than I ever thought. And then you've got the politics, you've got this, and you've probably got dressing room kind of, I'm bigger than you and all this kind of stuff that's going on, and you can't drop players, you can drop players. He tries to do things and the crowds are disappearing. Then the owner's going, no, the crowds are disappearing. We need to sort of do some more stuff to get them back. So you just need to get some more wins. And there's no real long-term plan. Money's disappeared. There's so many problems. And it's like it needs somebody who's really logical to sit down and go, tell you something, this is the way we are going to fix it. We need to do X. We need to do Y. We need to maybe have a look at what this club has done over here and that club has done over there, and not do what that club has done over there and mimic it. And to be quite honest with you, it may take us 3 years or 2 years, but that's what we have to do. This whole idea of, oh yes, we need to get back to the Premier League tomorrow. It's like, well, yeah, everyone wants to be in this league. You can see everyone wants to go in the Premier League. Look, Bristol City, look how they're doing. Everyone laughed at them last season. Bristol City, look, there they are. So Bristol City are ahead of the game compared to Sunderland. They've got money, not a shed load of money, but they've got money. They've got organisation. Their scouting is quite good. They've got a young, jubbly, vibrant, quite funny manager. You know what I'm saying? So they're kind of ahead of the game. So you kind of got to have a look to see what else is going around you to say, tell you what, we need to kind of pull ourselves back here a little bit and start planning from the bottom up. And like I said to you, Sunderland, I'd like them to do well. And I actually thought it was a bit of a blip at the beginning of the season. You pull yourself around. But at the moment now, saying that we're playing Brentford on Saturday, we always seem to kickstart people's seasons. But
we do that too.
But other than that, I'm getting a little bit worried to think, actually, tell you something, you might actually be the team that actually saves Birmingham City, which is the team that we desperately want to go down because we've got massive rivalry with them.
I mean, with the question that I asked there, I was just saying I tend to ask it every week because I find it interesting. But I think you nailed it. I honestly think of all the people I've spoken to, you've nailed it. I think I couldn't have put it better myself. I think there isn't a plan. It is a quick fix. It's sticky back plasters. It's Poyet to Di Canio to Steve Bruce, Martin O'Neill, and now you got Coleman. But it's funny you mentioned before. You said about Coleman. You said I mentioned his name, and you said good manager. I agree. I think what he's got at the moment is a bad football club, a rotten apple. I think everyone can see that, in Sunderland and outside of it. But you mentioned, obviously, you said good manager, and you mentioned what you think Sunderland need, and I agree with you, like to a T. I agree with everything you said. Do you think that Coleman is the right manager from an outside looking in?
Yes, but again, it's like, sometimes it's square peg and round hole. Chris Coleman be probably a good manager for us. He might be a good manager for a few Premier League sides. So he's a good manager, but it really does depend on what happens in the next 6 months or 8 months, how much time they give him, if he gets peed off. It depends on what the long-term plan is going to be. It's interesting. He's a great manager with Fulham. You speak to any Fulham fan, they speak very fondly of him. Interestingly, he obviously did with Wales against adversity, as they say. What I'm saying? It's like they definitely punched against above their weight in the Euros. I'm saying that they did have a world-class player in their side who was the difference between one team and the next. And if he's out of the team, it makes them a very different team to what they were before. But saying that, he still managed to pull in and got the team spirit going and everything like that, which is something that you cannot knock. Now, this is possibly a different game with him because, you've got players who have come down from the Premier League and they're down in Division 1. And so you're, probably quite similar to international football, what, England or Brazil or Germany would be, and you're up there thinking, oh, I should be up there. But all of a sudden, like England, you're not as high as you should be. So how side as opposed to Wales, who are, lower ranked side in principle. But then you're able to go, against the flow and say, tell you something, we're world beaters, we'll beat everyone. And they just rise above all of that. So, that's really, really able to deal with a different fish in the fish tank, I suppose it is, whatever you call it. Like I'm saying, with Sunderland, because you are potentially, you've been in that Premier League for quite a while, and I'm sure that there are players who have just got that attitude. There's that club, and okay, they're down in the bottom division, and I think there's a bit of a reality pill sort of taking place now. Tell you what it is, it probably reminds me, but not quite as bad as when Leeds United came down a few seasons ago, and then they ended up coming down to when we were, because don't forget we were never in the Championship, we were always in Division 1, and then they ended up coming down to Division. Even when they got down to Division 1, they couldn't quite believe they were in Division 1. They were just like, no, we're too big for this. And then the first season, they were just getting bashed around all over the place. We went down there, we almost beat them when we went up there, and they just couldn't believe it. And then when they came to Griffin Park, we drew 0-0, and they were just kind of, everyone does that. Teams like Brentford, they say, we're getting humiliated by teams like Brentford, and it was brilliant feeling. But it was, Sheffield United did the same thing as well. When they came down from the Championship, then they came down to Division 1, and they were a little bit like, they were properly teams like Brentford, they were. And it took them about 3 seasons to kind of just basically just be more humble. And they eventually went up there and they're like, oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, we are like the rest of you now, but it took them 3 seasons. They thought they were just too big for the league, too big for us. And I think there's that scenario where when the reality pill really hits and everyone goes, okay, this is where we are at now, then maybe people will actually start to make a proper plan as to how they're going to move forward. I do a bit of lecturing as well. I lecture in Market University, and there's this grief cycle. You know what I'm saying? And we talk about I'm in the music industry as well, and there's the grief cycle when as you remember, when the internet hit, and there was when the internet hit, and the music industry, CDs also was, oh no, there's peer-to-peer sharing, and people borrowing records on the internet and stuff like that. And then there's the growth of mobile phones, and everything just started to happen. It's called the perfect storm. Okay, whole industry changed at once, but instead of the music industry going, right, we'll deal with this, they just ignored it to a certain extent, then just tried to sue everybody for illegally downloading. It's like suing sort of like Jimmy, in Huddersfield, like, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, no, actually, you're not really dealing with this very well. So they went through a little cycle, and it's like this sort of grief cycle where it was kind of like, there was anger and there was grief, and then
denial,
and you could deny. That's it. And exactly the same thing that happens with these football clubs, where they're going through the same period. And eventually what you do is that when you've come through the bottom of that cycle, then you get to sort of like kind of negotiation and how will we move things forward. And I think that is where the football clubs need to get to. That's where Sunderland needs to get to get to the next stage. Yeah,
no, you know what? You've nailed it again. I think... because that's how it feels as a fan. It still sometimes doesn't feel like we're in the Championship. And it's not that I'm, an ignorant or arrogant fan. I never really felt like we were a Premiership club the way we performed. But there is an element of like, I almost can't believe where we are in this league. Like, it's almost like what we do in there. Why are we not winning more games than this? Because there was a big theory that, if we'll go down, at least we'll win more than 5 games, 6 games this season. At least we'll win a game before August. And we're sitting here only on 5 wins, second bottom of the league. So nothing has really changed. It's almost like the attitude of the club and the atmosphere of the club hasn't actually changed much. But then on the flip side, we're talking about Coleman, and again, Saturday was crazy for the first 45 minutes, but pulling 3 goals back with 20 minutes to go that's character building. And I think that's definitely come from some of the younger boys who maybe are like actually excited to be in the team, such as Ethan Robson, Joel Asoro, the young boys that are excited to be in the league, and they're not thinking about where they are. They don't have that cycle of grief, as you said, and almost, Coleman, I think, is the same. I think he's coming in understood almost the gravity of the situation, but I think he has a confidence and almost an air of arrogance about himself that he knows he can get himself out of it, but he's got a little dole of realism that he brought with him.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I hear that as well. And but the fact is that just coming back to it and a positivity, you have actually got some decent players. You know what I'm saying? You haven't got rubbish there. You've got some decent players. If you look at again what people have to do in the Championship to survive, you look at what Burton have to do. I don't think they've paid more than 500 grand for any player in their squads. Like, they're still sticking their head above it. Barnsley as well. I mean, I don't know what the highest fee they paid for someone, but I'm sure that they haven't paid any more than about £1.5 million or £2 million for a player. So, it is possible when you've got some half decent players in your squad, so you should be able to turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, the one big surprise for me on Saturday, a player that's been annoying me for absolutely weeks, Aiden McGeady, he came on with, I think, 25, 30 minutes to go. And obviously we've got the 3 goals in the last 20 or so minutes. And I think he was part of at least 2 of them. He gave the ball to Asoro, which led to the equaliser, the own goal. He got the second one, obviously. It was a good little free kick coming in. And there is quality there. I think you're right. There is certainly to be doing better than what we're at. But I think, we've discussed this at length with a few people, but I don't think any guest has kind of nailed it as well as you have in terms of, an accurate short description of exactly what's gone wrong with the football club from, as you said, the bottom upwards. But there is always sort of two questions that I like to ask before I let any guest go. And this could be interesting because we're coming in the back of this game on a relatively positive, surprising performance from our perspective. And a lot of people stumble a little bit when I ask this question, but I will ask it. Is there anybody that you would take from the Sunderland side to go into the Brentford team? And I mean that I suppose we've discussed certain players, certain attitudes that go into the team. So taking that thought, is there anyone you see in the Sunderland team that you think would fit in at Brentford?
It's funny. I mean, it's quite a difficult question because obviously you love your team, you love your players, and you sort of think, okay, is it a case of, just adding people indiscriminately, or is it a case of adding somebody where you think that there might be a little bit of a weakness, like, you know? For me, I mean, just forgetting about the positions at Brentford, the players, the one player who, and also forgetting the fact that we normally only sign players who are 21 or 22 or, years old anyway, you know what I'm saying? But forgetting that, the player who caused us a few problems, not playing for you, but playing for Preston last season was Aiden McGeady. And we played them up there and he scored two absolutely fantastic goals. I think both of them from about 30 or 25 or 30 yards as well. And they were yeah, they're really good. And one of them actually just kind of got the ball and he kind of just ran through and he got through midfield and they just shot it from 25 yards and it was a brilliant goal. And they beat us last season. I can't remember the score as well. I think it might have been 3-1 or 3-2 and it was quite upsetting. It wasn't upsetting because we had a laugh anyway at Preston. We got our revenge this year because we beat them 3-2, so that was fine. So he's one who for me, if you want to put it on that, you sort of think Aiden McGeady, he can, when the time's right, he could do it. Whether or not he fit into our side because, play for Ireland, big, he probably could be perceived as maybe a bit of a jolly big bollocks, is to use that phrase. You know what I'm saying? Our players aren't on more than probably about 10 grand a week, and he's probably on 5 times that. So how would that fit into our scenario? That's a different scenario altogether. Vaughan as well. James Vaughan, is that the Huddersfield James Vaughan?
Yeah, we sold him now. He's gone to Wigan. We sold him for. Okay. He didn't really work too well here.
He was I was quite surprised actually when he got that move. He was all right, he was all right when he was there, but then he got that move, and I thought, okay, that's interesting. He wound us up. He had a brilliant game for Huddersfield a couple of seasons ago, actually, against us when they beat us. Not last season, the season before that as well. He had a brilliant game when they beat us. But then we got our own back because we beat them 5-1 the following season. But that was all good. But it's difficult, Jack Rodwell. I mean, I've seen your players play, only so much, and obviously the problem is that your defence is obviously not great.
Yeah,
you're not scoring. You're not scoring enough goals, and your midfield. So it's going to be down to your midfield. And we've got about sort of 75 midfielders, so it's difficult for me to say I would like to replace your midfield of ours because we've got, if anything, we need to offload some midfielders. Like we just bought another one from Limerick in this window as well. Chidozie Ogbini, who's like meant to be one of the hottest players in the Irish Football League. Again, the places that we look at. So he's come straight into our first team squad. He probably won't get in for this season because we're training him up. But that's kind of what we do. So I've gone for the Aiden McGeady, which might be a little bit obvious. But other than that, I would have said Lewis Grabban before you sold him because he always causes us problems. Always causes us problems. He does. After, and I think it's the reason why is because we let him go. He started off with us, and
that's right.
Yeah, we let him go, man. It's Andy Scott, and Andy Scott got sacked, and we weren't sure whether or not we should take him or leave him. And apparently his stats were quite good, but I don't know if the committee at the time who talked about it is. I think the stats side was saying the stats aren't too bad. Let's keep him. But I think the decision was that they didn't think he showed enough promise, and they made a decision to make him go. These things happen. Sometimes you get him right, sometimes you get him wrong. He went to Rotherham with Andy Scott, who was our previous manager, and that's where he just took off from there. But hey, it doesn't always work out for you. You know what I'm saying? So
Are you down on Saturday for the game?
Of course. I did. I went to all 49 games last season. So, and this is what we call the BG, the big game of the season for Brentford fans. It's a bit disappointing because we probably would have had more. I don't know how many tickets we sold. We would have had a lot more, but because it was on FA Cup 5th round day, and for some stupid reason, we actually felt that we actually might get through to the 5th round, even though even though, to be fair, what my mate Gaz, who's coming up, he actually bought a train ticket immediately when they went on sale on the sort of 11th of November, knowing that we wouldn't be in the 5th round, and neither would you do. So he's coming up for about £25 return.
Good man.
Yeah, but we held out, and I was actually sitting there. We were playing Notts County in the Cup, and we were 1-0 down, and I think it was about 10 minutes ago, and I was sitting there in the phone app booking my train tickets, just had to be done. So yeah, we're up, we're all up, we're all, a lot of us going up to Newcastle on the Friday night, a lot of people coming up on Saturday, and then they're staying overnight as well. So yeah, I've got no idea how many tickets we sold, but I'd like to think we're going to bring 1,500 up there on Saturdays. Like I said, it's a long way, and if you don't book it in time, as you know, the prices are absolutely astronomical. But for any Sunderland fan out there who's a London-based or fancies going down to London after the game, I have actually got a spare ticket from Sunderland to London on the 5:29, which is going very, very cheap. We bought an extra ticket, and so we've got one ticket spare. So if everyone fancies the ticket, they can get in touch with me through Beesotted, BWSOTTED, on our Twitter, or you can check our Beesotted1992@gmail.com. Just get hold of us, and it's there. It's yours.
Now that is an offer we've never had from a guest before. I'm sure someone will take you up on that. We have a good London fan base. So before I let you go, I suppose worth asking, prediction for Saturday.
I've been a little bit kind of more laid back in my predictions. I've always gone for Brentford wins because I can't go for anything else, and I'm feeling rather depressed. I might go for a draw. I'm saying that we've lost two. We lost against Derby County. We lost against Norwich at home. We lost against Derby. To be fair, they did have we did have 10 men for most of the game, and then we didn't win on Saturday against Preston. We're creating chances still. We're still trying to find our goal scorer, but I think that we're going to have to win a game at some stage now, and we're still good enough to do it. And I think that Saturday is going to be the day. I think it's going to be 2-1 to Brentford because we just struggle a little bit on the clean sheet front.
Well, I'm going to disagree with my guest for once. I think I'm going to go for a Sunderland win, and the reason for that, I've got to go into this a bit more positively. I haven't seen Sunderland win since 2016 in the flesh, and it's not like I don't go often. I had a season ticket up until December. I've kind of tailed off a little bit since then. I think people know I took a bit of a rest, and I missed the 2 home games that we won, and we famously hadn't won at home in ages. And every away game I went to, we kind of got nicked 1-0, or we just drew. So I'm going to take Sunderland 2-0. You know what I mean? I'm going to go for the clean sheet. And I hope I'm right, because I'd like to see us win. But it's very rare I disagree. And normally I'm quite depressed. And normally I say we'll get beat or we'll draw. But I'm gonna go for a win. And I think I owe that to myself. But thanks very, very much for coming on. It was actually a really insightful chat, Billy. It really was, because it's I've spoke to Hull fans this season, Ipswich fans, teams from every different level of management and ownership and idea of what they've got. And I was really intrigued by Brentford's the statistical analysis they do, the management, and the fact that they have that Swansea-esque style of football that never changes no matter who's in charge. And I really wanted to pick your brains on that, and I feel like I got a really good idea of it.
Yeah, no, that's wicked. Yeah, well, like I said to you, it's still work in progress for us, and the problem that we have, like I said to you, we've only got limited budgets, and the fact is, the interesting thing is that if we had more money, we wouldn't deviate from what we're doing. But instead of buying, as we did with with Khalil Malpay and Ollie Watkins, who both cost about £1.5 million, rough diamonds, and hopefully if they're good, then they'll end up becoming 5, 8 and 10, 12 million pounds. We'll end up buying £3 million players if we've got more money, or £4 million. You know what I'm saying? You just put the bar up and you put the quality level up, but you'll still find those players who are £4 million, but hopefully they'll be 15 million and 18 million. So the ethos will always be the same. It just means that you'll actually have a little, if you've got more money, we'll have a little bit more money to spend to try and find these unknown players and still buy them below the value of what they should be. Does that make sense?
Of course, 100%. Yeah. I think it's to have a plan sounds very weird to me as a Sunderland fan, but I still remember some kind of recruitment plan that we used to have once back in the day. So yeah, it still makes sense to me a bit. But just before we let you go, Billy, where can we find you? Remind us again on Twitter and online.
Well, you can find us. We're called Beesotted. It's Beesotted.com. So it's Beesotted as in Brentford Bees. Beesotted.com. On Twitter as well, it's Beesotted. Audio and Audio Boom as well. We've got a channel there which is Beesotted, which we've got a podcast on Thursday. We'll do a podcast on Thursday, which no doubt we'll have a Sunderland fan on, which we'll be chatting to as well. So that'll be out on Thursday Thursday morning, 7:00 in the morning. And also after the match, about 7, maybe 7:30, we'll also have a post-match podcast again on Beesotted. If you go to Beesotted.com, all the links are on there, and we'll be talking to Sunderland fans and Brentford fans on that as well. And also, if you want to find us, I mean, on Saturday, of course, we're coming up and we're going to be having some beers in Sunderland somewhere. We don't quite know exactly where to go, but some people outside, and there's a few bars down there, and we'll find you out. So if anyone's got any recommendations for us to have a good old drink up, please let us know, because we're absolutely potty for it.
Well, I'll be there on Saturday. You've got my number. I don't know if I'm the best at recommendations, but I'll try my certain best, and I'm sure if not, the guys on Twitter will tell you where you can have a good sup. For want of a better word. But,
all right, okay. We will do. But we'll be by the water. Apparently, there's some waterfront, there's some water, and dockside or something like that, some sort of docking area. So we'll be. I'm sure we'll be over that side, which is all good. And I'll be looking forward to meeting up with Dave, and basically from the FSF, the Football Supporters Federation, which is based in Sunderland, because I'm part of the FSF as well. I'm the board of the FSF, so I've got my activities. So I do come up to Sunderland a fair bit. So I'm looking up for seeing Dave and Pete and Michael, and I might see Sobsy as well, and Connor, and all sorts of Sunderland characters. So I'm sort of quite excited about coming up. Just meeting up with as many people as possible.
Awesome. It's nice to hear someone actually excited to be coming up. It's good. Yeah. You're putting positivity into me. Stop it right now. But don't enjoy your weekend in terms of 3 o'clock till 4:45. I really hope you don't. I always leave the podcast saying that because I want to see us win. But enjoy your weekend. Thanks so much for coming on, Billy. And honestly, really great chatting to you. Really, really lovely.
And you too, mate. Nice one.
Thanks, mate. Catch you. That's the end of episode 12, 13. I don't know. I think it might be 11. I don't know, really. But anyway, I'm feeling much more positive. I don't know why, because I was, again, absolutely flabbergasted with Saturday, but I really feel the psychological change from that match on Saturday. I think, 1-0 wins are great. Don't get me wrong. They give you more points. They give you a clean sheet. But coming back from 3-0 down with 20 minutes to go, I've never seen the Sunderland side do that for a long time. I haven't seen the Sunderland side come back for a long time. And it was nice for once to see the senior players moulding with the younger players to bring that point back and to find that character. You had McGeady, who had a really good game when he came on, and I've been very critical of him. And Lee Cattermole I've been very critical of as well. He wasn't brilliant in the first half, but he really did play a part in that comeback. And I think week on week on week, I'm just loving Joel Asoro. I never thought I ever would. I didn't think he was good enough 2 months ago, and I really think the guy's coming on. I think Ethan Robson, when he came on as a substitute as well, did well. And it's nice to see, maybe we had a stroke of luck with the own goals. Maybe we did, and that's fine. We don't get a great deal of it. But the lads forced that issue, and they showed real character to come back in that. And I think for the first time in a long time, I really felt that although no one got overjoyed or carried away with that 3-3 draw, we still remembered the first half. We all seemed together at the end of that. We all understood that that wasn't a relief like sometimes the wins have been this season. It felt like a kind of like, right, this is the character we now have until the end of the season. And if we can continue that, and I know it won't be plain sailing until the end of the season, we're good enough to stay up in this league. We're good enough to make an impact on this league. We're good enough to win games at home, and we're good enough to win games away, because Bristol City are not a bad side. They're a bloody good side in this league. Maybe not fashionable, but they are a good team. And Brentford are very much the same, but we're also a good team. What we miss is character, and I've seen plenty of that in abundance in the last 20 minutes. I'm not saying it's going to change everything, but it definitely did stoke me with a little bit of positivity. And I really think going ahead, if we can take that kind of character that we had, we're not going to go wrong, and we're going to stay up. And we know if anyone can instill character into that team, I think Chris Coleman's the man, and he started doing it. Yeah, there's some games when we've got hammered, but he's just all continued to say the right things. No one's turned their back on Chris Coleman yet. Maybe he needs to change the plan. Maybe he needs to go with 4 at the back. But I'm confident. I'm feeling positive. I hope I feel as positive going into next week's podcast. But thanks for tuning in, as always. I thought Billy was a fantastic guest, probably my favourite so far. I thought he was brilliant, really well researched, speaks a lot of sense, and it was really insightful to see how Brentford have really kind of turned from a low-level league team in Division 2, Division 3 to a solid championship outfit that's always there or thereabouts outside the playoffs. But catch us again next week. Hope I'm talking about a win. Hope you tune in. Thanks.